Hello and welcome to the Witty UK channel. This video is designed to help you prepare for the life in the UK test by covering the extensive history of the United Kingdom, from prehistoric times to the modern era. We will explore key historical periods, significant events and notable figures. And let's start the rich history of the United Kingdom. Before we dive into the detailed history of the UK, it is essential to understand the distinctions between several key terms: the United Kingdom, England, Britain, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. These terms are often used interchangeably but refer to different entities. Let's clarify these differences. The United Kingdom, UK. The United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, commonly known as the United Kingdom or the UK, is a sovereign country located off the northwestern coast of mainland Europe. It consists of 4 constituent countries: England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. Great Britain. Great Britain is the largest island in the British Isles and includes 3 countries: England, Scotland, and Wales. The term Britain is often used informally to refer to the entire United Kingdom, but technically it excludes Northern Ireland. England. England is the largest and most populous country in the UK. It is located in the southern part of Great Britain and is home to the capital city, London. England has a rich history and has been a significant political influence within the UK and globally. Scotland. Scotland is located in the northern part of Great Britain. It has its own distinct legal and educational systems and a rich cultural heritage. The capital of Scotland is Edinburgh, and its largest city is Glasgow. Scotland joined the Kingdom of Great Britain in 1707 through the Act of Union. Wales. Wales is located to the west of England on the island of Great Britain. It has its own language, Welsh, which is widely spoken alongside English. The capital of Wales is Cardiff. Wales became part of the Kingdom of England in 1536 through the Laws and Wales Acts. Northern Ireland. Northern Ireland is located on the island of Ireland, to the west of Great Britain. It shares the island with the Republic of Ireland, which is a separate sovereign nation. The capital of Northern Ireland is Belfast. Northern Ireland was established as a separate entity within the UK in 1921. British Isles. The British Isles is a geographical term that refers to the group of islands, including Great Britain, Ireland, and over 6,000 smaller islands. It is important to note that this term is purely geographical and does not denote political entities. Prehistoric Britain. Stone Age, 10,000 years ago. Hunter-gatherers. The first inhabitants of England were hunter-gatherers who arrived around 10,000 years ago during the Mesolithic period. They lived in small, mobile groups relying on hunting, fishing, and gathering wild plants for sustenance. These early settlers used simple tools made of stone, bone, and wood. Neolithic period. Around 4000 BC, a significant transformation occurred with the advent of the Neolithic period. This era marked the transition from hunting and gathering to farming and settlement. Early farmers began cultivating crops such as wheat and barley and domesticating animals like sheep, goats, and cattle. This agricultural revolution led to the establishment of permanent villages. Stonehenge. One of the most iconic monuments from this period is Stonehenge, constructed approximately 6,000 years ago by early farmers from Southeast Europe. Located in Wiltshire, England, Stonehenge is a prehistoric stone circle whose purpose remains a subject of speculation. It is believed to have been used for ceremonial or religious purposes, possibly related to astronomical events. Bronze Age, 4,000 years ago. Development of bronze. The Bronze Age began around 200 BC with the arrival of new technologies, including metalworking. Bronze, an alloy of copper and tin, became widely used for making tools, weapons, and jewelry. This period saw significant advancements in craftsmanship and trade. Beaker culture. The Beaker culture, named after the distinctive pottery vessels found in their burial sites, played a crucial role during the Bronze Age. These people introduced new burial practices, including the construction of barrows, burial mounds, and the use of individual graves. The Beaker culture also facilitated long-distance trade, exchanging goods like metal objects, pottery, and amber. Settlements and trade. Bronze Age settlements were often located near sources of metal ores and along trade routes. These communities engaged in farming, mining, and trading, leading to increased social complexity and the emergence of elites who controlled valuable resources. Iron Age, 800 BC. Introduction of iron. Around 800 BC, the Iron Age began with the introduction of ironworking technology. Iron, being more abundant and durable than bronze, revolutionized tool and weapon production. The use of iron plows improved agriculture, leading to increased food production and population growth. Celtic tribes. The Iron Age was characterized by the dominance of Celtic tribes across Britain. These tribes, including the Britons in the south and the Picts in the north, spoke Celtic languages and shared common cultural traits. They lived in hill forts which served as fortified settlements and centers of trade and governance. Social structure. Celtic society was hierarchical with chieftains or kings at the top, followed by warriors, craftsmen, and farmers. Druids, the religious leaders, played a significant role in Celtic culture, overseeing rituals, education, and legal matters. The Celts practiced a polytheistic religion, worshipping a variety of gods and goddesses associated with nature, fertility, and warfare. Roman Britain, 55 BC, 410 AD. Roman Conquest. Julius Caesar's expeditions. The Roman conquest of Britain began with Julius Caesar's expeditions in 55 and 54 BC. Although these initial attempts were not successful in establishing long-term control, they marked the beginning of Roman interest in the island. Claudius's invasion, 43 AD. The decisive Roman invasion occurred in 43 AD under Emperor Claudius. The Romans, led by General Aulus Plautius, successfully defeated local tribes and established Roman rule. This marked the beginning of Roman Britain, which would last for nearly 4 centuries. Roman rule. Romanization. The Romans introduced their culture, language, and governance to Britain. Major cities such as Londinium, London, Iberacum, York, and Verulamium, St. Albans, were founded. Roman roads, forts, and villas dotted the landscape, facilitating trade, communication, and military control. Infrastructure. The Romans built extensive infrastructure, including aqueducts, bathhouses, and amphitheaters. They also introduced new agricultural techniques, such as crop rotation and irrigation, which boosted food production. Economy and trade. Roman Britain became an integral part of the vast Roman trade network. Goods such as pottery, glassware, wine, and olive oil were imported, while Britain exported products like grain, metals, and wool. Roman coins and currency facilitated trade and commerce. Cultural impact. Language and law. Latin became the language of administration, law, and culture. Many place names in modern Britain have Roman origins. Roman law and governance left a lasting legacy, influencing the development of British legal and political systems. Religion. The Romans introduced their pantheon of gods and goddesses, but they also encountered local Celtic deities. Over time, religious syncretism occurred, blending Roman and Celtic beliefs. The spread of Christianity began in the later years of Roman rule, leading to the establishment of early Christian communities. Queen Boudicca's revolt, 6061 AD. One of the most significant events during Roman Britain was the revolt led by Queen Boudicca of the Iceni tribe. In 6061 AD, Boudicca raised an army and launched a fierce rebellion against Roman rule. Although initially successful, her forces were eventually defeated by the Roman governor Suetonius Paulinus. Decline of Roman rule. Hadrian's Wall. In 122 AD, Emperor Hadrian ordered the construction of Hadrian's Wall to defend the northern frontier of Roman Britain from Pictish tribes. The wall stretched across northern England, marking the boundary of the Roman Empire. Economic decline. By the late 4th century, Roman Britain faced economic challenges, including declining trade and increased taxation. The central authority of the Roman Empire weakened, and Britain became more vulnerable to external threats. End of Roman rule, 410 AD. In 410 AD, the Roman Empire, under increasing pressure from barbarian invasions, withdrew its legions from Britain. The Roman administration collapsed, leaving Britain to fend for itself against various invading forces. Anglo-Saxon period, 410, 1066. Post-Roman invasion, Germanic tribes. After the Romans left, Britain was invaded by Germanic tribes, including the Angles, Saxons, and Jutes from present-day Germany, Denmark, and the Netherlands. These tribes gradually settled in different parts of Britain, leading to the establishment of several Anglo-Saxon kingdoms. Formation of Anglo-Saxon kingdoms. By the 7th century, the major Anglo-Saxon kingdoms of Northumbria, Mercia, Wessex, East Anglia, Kent, Essex and Sussex had emerged. These kingdoms frequently engaged in warfare, forming alliances and rivalries. Society and culture, agriculture and settlement. Anglo-Saxon society was primarily agrarian, with farming and animal husbandry being the main sources of livelihood. Villages were small and self-sufficient, with houses made of wood and thatch. Social structure. The Anglo-Saxon social hierarchy consisted of kings or chieftains at the top, followed by nobles, thanes, free peasants, ceorls, and slaves. The king's authority was reinforced by a council of nobles known as the Witan. Language and literature. Old English, derived from Germanic languages, became the dominant language. The Anglo-Saxons produced a rich body of literature, including epic poems like Beowulf, religious texts, and chronicles. Monasteries became centers of learning and manuscript production. Christianization. Missionaries. Christianity began to spread in Anglo-Saxon England in the 6th and 7th centuries, largely due to the efforts of missionaries from Ireland and Rome. St. Augustine of Canterbury, sent by Pope Gregory the Great in 597 AD, played a crucial role in converting the Kingdom of Kent. Church establishment. The Christian Church became a powerful institution, influencing politics, culture, and education. Monasteries and cathedrals were built, and the Church established a network of parishes across the kingdoms. King Alfred the Great, 871–999. Defense against Vikings. King Alfred of Wessex is one of the most celebrated Anglo-Saxon rulers. He successfully defended his kingdom against Viking invasions, notably winning the Battle of Edington in 878 AD. Reforms. Alfred implemented significant reforms, including the establishment of a navy, the construction of fortified towns, burhs, and the promotion of education and legal reforms. He also commissioned the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, a historical record of events in England. Viking invasions, 789, 1066. Viking arrival. First raids. Viking raids on England began in 789 AD, with a particularly notorious attack on the monastery at Lindisfarne in 793 AD. These raids were carried out by seafaring Norse warriors from Scandinavia, today Norway, Denmark, and Sweden. Invasion and settlement. Over time, the Vikings transitioned from raiding to settling in England. They established the Danelaw, a region in eastern and northern England where Danish laws and customs prevailed. King Alfred the Great. Defense and diplomacy. King Alfred of Wessex played a pivotal role in defending Anglo-Saxon England against Viking invasions. In 878 AD, he achieved a decisive victory at the Battle of Edington, forcing the Viking leader Guthrum to convert to Christianity and establish a truce. Reforms and legacy. Alfred's efforts to strengthen his kingdom included building a network of fortified towns, burhs, creating a navy, and promoting education and legal reforms. His reign laid the foundation for the eventual unification of England under his successors. Viking influence. Cultural exchange. The Viking presence in England led to cultural exchange and intermarriage between the Norse settlers and the Anglo-Saxons. Norse words, place names, and customs were integrated into English society. Danelaw, the Danelaw region, which included parts of modern-day Yorkshire, East Anglia, and the Midlands, became a distinct cultural and legal entity. The Vikings established their own governance and legal systems in these areas. End of Viking rule. Reunification. The process of reuniting England began under King Alfred's grandson, King Athelstan, who defeated the Viking Kingdom of York in 927 AD. By the mid-10th century, England was largely unified under Anglo-Saxon rule. Norman Conquest. The Viking Age in England came to an end with the Norman Conquest in 1066. William the Conqueror, a descendant of Viking settlers in Normandy, defeated the Anglo-Saxon King Harold Godwinson at the Battle of Hastings, establishing Norman rule over England. Norman Conquest, 1866. Battle of Hastings. Background. The Norman conquest of England was precipitated by the death of King Edward the Confessor in January 1066, which left a power vacuum. Harold Godwinson, Earl of Wessex, was crowned king, but his claim was contested by William, Duke of Normandy, who asserted that Edward had promised him the throne. Invasion and battle. William assembled a fleet and invaded England in September 1066. The decisive Battle of Hastings took place on October 14, 1066, where William's forces defeated Harold's army. Harold was killed in the battle, leading to the collapse of Anglo-Saxon resistance. Establishment of Norman rule. Coronation. William was crowned King of England on Christmas Day 1066 at Westminster Abbey. His reign marked the beginning of significant changes in English society, governance, and culture. Feudal system. William introduced the feudal system to England, redistributing land to his Norman supporters and establishing a hierarchical structure of lords, vassals, and serfs. This system centralized power and control in the hands of the Norman nobility. Doomsday Book, 1086. To assess and tax his new kingdom, William commissioned the Domesday Book, a comprehensive survey of land holdings and resources in England. This document provides invaluable historical insights into medieval English society. Cultural and linguistic impact. Language. The Normans brought the Old French language to England, which significantly influenced the development of Middle English. Many French words were integrated into the English vocabulary, especially in areas related to law, governance, and culture. Architecture. The Normans introduced Romanesque architectural styles, building impressive stone castles, churches, and cathedrals. Notable examples include the Tower of London, Durham Cathedral, and Norwich Cathedral. Resistance and rebellion. Harrying of the North, 1069-1070. William faced resistance from various Anglo-Saxon nobles, particularly in the north of England. In response, he launched a brutal campaign known as the Harrying of the North, devastating the region to quell rebellion and consolidate his control. Rebellions and challenges. Throughout William's reign and that of his successors, there were sporadic uprisings and challenges to Norman rule. However, the Normans successfully maintained their grip on England, integrating with the local population over time. Legacy of the Norman Conquest. Transformation of society. The Norman Conquest fundamentally transformed English society, introducing new governance structures, land ownership patterns, and cultural influences. It marked the end of the Anglo-Saxon era and the beginning of a new chapter in English history. Cultural synthesis. Over the following centuries, the Normans and Anglo-Saxons gradually merged, creating a unique blend of cultures. This synthesis laid the foundation for the development of the English language, legal system, and social customs. The Middle Ages, 1066-1485. Period of transformation. The Middle Ages, spanning from the Norman Conquest in 1066 to the end of the Wars of the Roses in 1485, was a period of significant transformation in England. It saw the consolidation of royal power, the development of feudalism, the impact of the Crusades, and the challenges of plague and warfare. Feudalism and social structure. Feudal system. The feudal system, introduced by the Normans, structured medieval society into a hierarchical arrangement. The king granted land to his nobles, barons, in exchange for military service. The barons, in turn, granted land to knights and lesser nobles who provided service and protection. At the bottom of the hierarchy were peasants who worked the land in exchange for protection and sustenance. Manorial system. The manorial system was the economic backbone of feudal society. Lords of the manor controlled large estates, manors, that included villages, farmland, and peasants. Peasants, also known as serfs, were bound to the land and worked for the lord in exchange for protection and a share of the produce. Crusades and religious influence. The Crusades. The Crusades were a series of religious wars initiated by European Christians to reclaim Jerusalem and other holy sites from Muslim control. English knights and nobles participated in these expeditions, which had a profound impact on European society, including the exchange of knowledge and culture. Church power. The Catholic Church wielded immense power and influence during the Middle Ages. The Church owned vast lands, collected tithes, and played a central role in education, healthcare, and governance. Monasteries and cathedrals were centers of learning and culture. Monastic life. Monasticism flourished during this period, with monks and nuns dedicating their lives to prayer, study, and manual labor. Monasteries became centers of agricultural production, manuscript copying, and intellectual activity. Key historical events. Magna Carta, 1215. One of the most significant events of the Middle Ages was the signing of the Magna Carta in 1215. This document, forced upon King John by rebellious barons, limited the king's powers and established certain legal protections for nobles. It laid the groundwork for constitutional governance and the principle that everyone, including the king, is subject to the law. The Anarchy, 1155–1153, a period of civil war and political chaos known as the Anarchy, occurred during the reign of King Stephen. The conflict arose over the succession to the English throne, leading to widespread disorder and violence. The Black Death, 1348–1350. The Black Death was a devastating pandemic that swept through Europe, including England, in the mid-14th century. It killed an estimated one-third of the population, leading to labor shortages, economic upheaval, and social change. The reduction in population resulted in higher wages for surviving workers and a shift in the balance of power between peasants and lords. Wars and conflicts. 100 Years' War, 1337–1453. The 100 Years' War was a prolonged conflict between England and France, lasting from 1337 to 1453. It was characterized by several major battles, including the Battle of Agincourt in 1415, where the English, led by Henry V, achieved a significant victory. The war ultimately ended with the English losing most of their territories in France. War of the Roses, 1455–1487. The War of the Roses was a series of dynastic conflicts between the rival houses of Lancaster, Red Rose, and York, White Rose, for control of the English throne. It culminated in the Battle of Bosworth Field in 1485, where Henry Tudor, Henry VII, defeated Richard III, leading to the establishment of the Tudor dynasty. Cultural and intellectual developments. Literature and art. The Middle Ages saw the flourishing of literature, art, and architecture. Notable works of literature include Geoffrey Chaucer's The Canterbury Tales and the anonymous epic poem Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. Gothic architecture reached its zenith with the construction of magnificent cathedrals such as Canterbury Cathedral and York Minster. Education and universities. The establishment of universities in Oxford and Cambridge in the 12th and 13th centuries marked a significant development in education and intellectual life. These institutions became centers of learning and scholarship, attracting students from across Europe. Philosophy and theology. Scholasticism, a method of learning that emphasized the use of reason and logic to explore theological and philosophical questions, dominated intellectual discourse. Prominent scholars like Thomas Aquinas and William of Ockham made significant contributions to medieval thought. The Tudors, 1485–1603. Henry VII, 1485–1509. Establishment of the Tudor dynasty. Henry VII's victory at the Battle of Bosworth Field in 1485 ended the War of the Roses and established the Tudor dynasty. His marriage to Elizabeth of York united the warring houses of Lancaster and York, bringing stability to England. Consolidation of power. Henry VII worked to consolidate his power, reduce the influence of the nobility, and strengthen the monarchy. He implemented financial reforms, encouraged trade, and built up a network of loyal advisors. Henry VIII, 1509–1547. Reformation and the Church of England. Henry VIII is best known for his role in the English Reformation. His desire to annul his marriage to Catherine of Aragon led to a break with the Roman Catholic Church and the establishment of the Church of England. The Act of Supremacy, 1534, declared Henry the supreme head of the Church of England. Wives and succession. Henry VIII had 6 wives: Catherine of Aragon, Anne Boleyn, Jane Seymour, Anne of Cleves, Catherine Howard, and Catherine Parr. His marriages were driven by his quest for a male heir. He had 3 children who survived infancy: Mary, Elizabeth, and Edward. Religious and political reforms. Henry's reign saw significant religious and political changes. The dissolution of the monasteries, 1536–1541, led to the confiscation of church lands and wealth. Henry also strengthened the navy, expanded royal authority, and promoted the use of the English language in religious services. Edward ceased, 1547–1553. Protestant reforms. Edward VI, Henry VIII's son, continued his father's religious reforms. His reign was marked by the promotion of Protestantism, the introduction of the Book of Common Prayer, and the establishment of a Protestant church hierarchy. Short reign and legacy. Edward's reign was short and he died at the age of 15. His efforts to solidify Protestantism laid the groundwork for future religious conflicts. Mary I, 1553-1558, returned to Catholicism. Mary I, Henry VIII's daughter by Catherine of Aragon, sought to restore Catholicism in England. She reversed many of her father's and brother's religious reforms, re-establishing papal authority and persecuting Protestants. Bloody Mary. Mary's reign is often remembered for the Marian persecutions, during which hundreds of Protestants were executed. This period earned her the nickname Bloody Mary. Marriage and foreign policy. Mary married Philip II of Spain, an alliance that proved unpopular. Her foreign policy aimed to strengthen ties with Catholic Europe, but it ultimately weakened her position at home. Elizabeth June, 1558-1603. Elizabethan religious settlement. Elizabeth I, Henry VIII's daughter by Anne Boleyn, sought a middle way between Catholicism and Protestantism. The Elizabethan religious settlement established the Church of England as a Protestant church with elements of traditional Catholic practice, expansion and exploration. Elizabeth's reign is often referred to as the Elizabethan era, a period of cultural flourishing and exploration. Notable figures such as Sir Francis Drake, Sir Walter Raleigh, and Sir Humphrey Gilbert undertook voyages of discovery, expanding England's influence overseas. Cultural Renaissance. The Elizabethan era witnessed a cultural renaissance with significant contributions to literature, drama, and the arts. William Shakespeare, Christopher Marlowe, and Edmund Spenser were among the prominent writers of the time. Defeat of the Spanish Armada, 1588. One of the most famous events of Elizabeth's reign was the defeat of the Spanish Armada in 1588. This naval victory against Spain, one of the most powerful empires of the time, solidified England's status as a major maritime power. Political stability and legacy. Elizabeth's reign brought political stability and economic growth. She skillfully navigated the challenges posed by religious divisions, threats, and internal dissent. Elizabeth never married and was known as the Virgin Queen. Her death in 1603 marked the end of the Tudor dynasty. The Stuarts, 1603-1714. James I, 1603-1625, Union of the Crowns. James VI of Scotland became James III of England in 1603, following the death of Elizabeth Renus. This union of the English and Scottish crowns marked the beginning of the Stuart dynasty. Religious tensions. James faced significant religious tensions during his reign. He sought to promote religious unity and commissioned the King James Version of the Bible in 1611. However, his policies often alienated both Puritans and Catholics. Gunpowder Plot, 1605. One of the most famous events of James's reign was the Gunpowder Plot, a failed Catholic conspiracy to assassinate the king and blow up the Houses of Parliament. The plot was uncovered, and the conspirators, including Guy Fawkes, were executed. Charles Bean, 1625-1649. Conflict with Parliament. Charles Wilson's reign was marked by escalating conflicts with Parliament. His belief in the divine right of kings and his attempts to govern without parliamentary consent led to a series of political crises. Personal rule, 1629-1640. From 1629 to 1640, Charles attempted to rule without calling Parliament, a period known as the personal rule. He raised funds through controversial means, such as ship money, which deepened opposition to his rule. Civil War, 1642-1651, the tensions between Charles and Parliament eventually erupted into the English Civil War. The war was fought between the Royalists, supporters of the king, and the Parliamentarians, supporters of Parliament. Key battles included the Battle of Edgehill, 1642, and the Battle of Naseby, 1645. Execution of Charles Bourne, 1649. After the defeat of the Royalist forces, Charles Mifflin was captured, tried for treason, and executed in 1649. This event marked the first and only time a reigning English monarch was executed. The Commonwealth and Protectorate, 1649-1660. Oliver Cromwell. Following the execution of Charles I, England was declared a republic, known as the Commonwealth. Oliver Cromwell emerged as the leading figure, serving as Lord Protector from 1653 until his death in 1658. Puritan rule. The Commonwealth was characterized by Puritan rule, with strict moral and religious regulations. Theaters were closed, and various forms of entertainment were suppressed. However, Cromwell's administration also implemented significant legal and administrative reforms. Restoration of the monarchy, 1660. After Cromwell's death, the Commonwealth faced increasing instability. In 1660, Charles II, son of Charles II, was invited to return to England and restore the monarchy. This event, known as the Restoration, marked the end of the Commonwealth and the return of the Stuart dynasty. Charles II, 1660-1685. Restoration era. Charles II's reign, known as the Restoration, was a period of relative stability and cultural revival. Theatres reopened and the arts flourished. However, the king faced ongoing religious and political challenges. Plague and fire, two significant disasters occurred during Charles II's reign. The Great Plague of 1665 killed thousands in London, and the Great Fire of 1666 destroyed much of the city. The rebuilding of London after the fire included the construction of notable landmarks such as St. Paul's Cathedral, designed by Sir Christopher Wren. Religious tensions. Charles II faced ongoing religious tensions, particularly regarding his attempts to promote religious tolerance for Catholics and dissenters. The Test Act of 1673 required public officials to take an oath of allegiance to the Church of England. James II, 1685-1688. Catholic monarch. James II, a Catholic, ascended to the throne in 1685. His attempts to promote religious tolerance for Catholics and dissenters, along with his autocratic tendencies, led to widespread opposition. Glorious Revolution, 1688. The Glorious Revolution was a pivotal event in English history. In 1688, James II was deposed in a bloodless coup, and his Protestant daughter Mary and her husband, William of Orange, were invited to take the throne. This event marked the end of James II's reign and established the constitutional monarchy. William III and Mary II, 1689-1702. Bill of Rights, 1689. The Glorious Revolution resulted in the passage of the Bill of Rights in 1689. This landmark document limited the powers of the monarchy, established parliamentary supremacy, and guaranteed certain rights and liberties to citizens. Act of Settlement, 1701. The Act of Settlement, passed in 1701, further secured the Protestant succession to the throne. It excluded Catholics from the line of succession and established that the monarch must be a member of the Church of England. Anne, 1702-1714. Union of England and Scotland, 1707. One of the most significant events of Queen Anne's reign was the Union of England and Scotland in 1707. The two kingdoms were united to form the Kingdom of Great Britain, with a single parliament and centralized government. War of Spanish Succession. Anne's reign was marked by the War of Spanish Succession, 1701-1714, a major conflict involving several European powers. The war ended with the Treaty of Utrecht in 1713, which established a balance of power in Europe and secured British territorial gains. End of the Stuart line. Anne's death in 1714 marked the end of the Stuart dynasty. She left no surviving heirs, and the throne passed to the House of Hanover in accordance with the Act of Settlement. The Georgians, 1714-1837. George Bibbian, 1714-1727. House of Hanover. George Baron, the first monarch of the House of Hanover, ascended to the throne in 1714. His reign marked the beginning of the Georgian era. George I was a German prince who spoke little English, which led to increased reliance on ministers and the development of the modern cabinet system. Political developments. The Whig Party dominated politics during George Britain's reign, with figures like Robert Walpole emerging as key leaders. Walpole is often considered the first Prime Minister of Great Britain. George II, 1727-1716. War of Austrian Succession. George II's reign saw Britain involved in the War of Austrian Succession, 1740-1748, a conflict over the succession to the Austrian throne. The war ended with the Treaty of Aix-la-Chapelle, which restored the status quo but failed to resolve underlying tensions. 7 Years' War, 1756-1763. The 7 Years' War was a global conflict that pitted Britain against France and its allies. The war ended with the Treaty of Paris in 1763, which resulted in significant territorial gains for Britain, including Canada and territories in India. Cultural flourishing. The Georgian era was a period of cultural flourishing, with advancements in literature, architecture, and the arts. Notable figures included the writers Samuel Johnson and Jonathan Swift, and the architects Robert Adam and John Nash. George III, 1760 to 1820. American Revolution, 1775-1783. One of the most significant events of George III's reign was the American Revolution. The conflict arose from tensions between the American colonies and the British government over issues such as taxation and representation. The war ended with the Treaty of Paris in 1783, which recognized the independence of the United States. Industrial Revolution. The late 18th and early 19th centuries saw the onset of the Industrial Revolution, a period of rapid technological and economic change. Innovations in machinery, transportation, and manufacturing transformed British society, leading to urbanization and changes in labor practices. Mental health and regency. In the later years of his reign, George III suffered from episodes of mental illness, leading to periods of regency. His son, the future George I, served as Prince Regent from 1811 until George III's death in 1820. George IV, 1820-1830. Prince Regent. George IV had already been serving as Prince Regent since 1811 due to his father's illness. His reign as king saw continued cultural and architectural development, including the completion of the Regency-style Royal Pavilion in Brighton. Political and social issues. George V's reign was marked by political and social issues, including the Peterloo Massacre in 1819, where a peaceful protest for parliamentary reform ended in violence. The period also saw the introduction of the Six Acts, repressive measures aimed at curbing dissent and radicalism. William IV, 1830-1837, Reform Act of 1832. One of the most significant events of William V's reign was the passage of the Reform Act of 1832. This landmark legislation expanded the electorate, reformed parliamentary representation, and addressed corruption in the electoral system. Abolition of slavery, 1833. The Slavery Abolition Act of 1833, passed during William V's reign, ended slavery in most parts of the British Empire. This act was a major milestone in the fight against slavery and the promotion of human rights. The Victorians, 1837-1901. Queen Victoria, 1837-1901. Longest reigning monarch, Queen Victoria reigned for 63 years, making her the longest reigning British monarch until surpassed by Queen Elizabeth II. Her reign, known as the Victorian era, was marked by significant social, economic, and cultural changes. Industrial Revolution. The Victorian era witnessed the height of the Industrial Revolution, with rapid advancements in technology, transportation, and industry. Innovations such as the steam engine, railways, and telegraph transformed daily life and the economy. Urbanization and social change. The Industrial Revolution led to urbanization, with people moving from rural areas to cities in search of work. This shift brought about significant social changes, including the rise of the working class and the development of new social and political movements. British Empire. Expansion. The Victorian era saw the expansion of the British Empire to its greatest extent, with territories in Africa, Asia, the Americas, and the Pacific. The phrase, "the sun never sets on the British Empire," reflected the vastness of British colonial holdings. Colonial administration. The administration of the empire involved a complex system of governance, trade, and diplomacy. The British East India Company played a significant role in the colonization of India, which became known as the jewel in the crown of the empire. Social reforms, child labor and education. The Victorian era saw significant social reforms, including laws aimed at reducing child labor and improving working conditions. The Education Act of 1870 established the framework for compulsory elementary education in England and Wales. Public health and housing. Reforms in public health and housing addressed the challenges posed by rapid urbanization. The Public Health Act of 1848 aimed to improve sanitation and reduce the spread of disease, while housing reforms sought to provide better living conditions for the working class. Cultural and intellectual developments. Literature and arts. The Victorian era was a golden age of literature and the arts. Prominent writers included Charles Dickens, the Bronte sisters, Thomas Hardy, and George Eliot. The period also saw the development of the Pre-Raphaelite movement in art and the Gothic revival in architecture. Scientific advancements. The Victorian era was marked by significant scientific advancements, including the work of Charles Darwin, whose theory of evolution by natural selection revolutionized biology. Other notable figures included Michael Faraday, who made important contributions to electromagnetism, and James Clerk Maxwell, who developed the theory of electromagnetism. Notable events: Great Exhibition of 1851. The Great Exhibition, held in the Crystal Palace in London, showcased the technological and industrial achievements of the Victorian era. It attracted millions of visitors from around the world and symbolized the progress and innovation of the age. Irish Famine, 1845-1852. The Irish potato famine was a devastating period of mass starvation and emigration in Ireland. The failure of the potato crop, combined with inadequate relief efforts, led to the deaths of approximately 1 million people and the emigration of millions more. Crimean War, 1853-1856. The Crimean War was a conflict between Russia and an alliance of Britain, France, and the Ottoman Empire. It is notable for the role of Florence Nightingale, who revolutionized nursing and hospital care during the war.
20th century and modern era, 1901-present. Early 20th century. Edwardian era, 1901-1910. Reign of Edward VII. The Edwardian era began with the ascension of Edward VII in 1901. His reign was characterized by social change and a continuation of Victorian values, with a greater focus on modernization. Technological and cultural advancements. This period saw significant advancements in technology and culture. The Wright brothers made their first powered flight in 1903, and the arts flourished with contributions from writers like H. G. Wells and composers such as Edward Elgar. Political developments. The Liberal Party, led by figures like Henry Campbell Bannerman and H. H. Asquith, dominated politics. Reforms during this period included the introduction of old-age pensions and the establishment of labor exchanges. World War I, 1914–1918. Outbreak of war. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria in 1914 triggered a complex web of alliances and hostilities, leading to the outbreak of World War I. Britain entered the war in August 1914. Major battles. Key battles involving British forces included the Battle of the Somme, 1916, which resulted in massive casualties, and the Battle of Passchendaele, 1917. Trench warfare became a defining feature of the conflict. Home front. The war had a profound impact on British society. Women entered the workforce in unprecedented numbers to replace men who had gone to fight. Rationing and conscription were introduced, and the war effort required significant sacrifices from the civilian population. End of the war. The war ended with the signing of the armistice on November 11, 1918. The Treaty of Versailles in 1919 officially concluded the conflict, imposing harsh penalties on Germany and redrawing the map of Europe. Interwar period. Economic challenges. Post-war recovery. The immediate post-war period was marked by economic difficulties as Britain struggled to transition from a wartime to a peacetime economy. The country faced high unemployment and industrial unrest. Great Depression. The global economic downturn of the 1930s, known as the Great Depression, hit Britain hard. Unemployment soared, and many families faced severe hardship. The government implemented various measures to stimulate the economy, including public works programs. Social and political movements. Labor movement. The Labour Party gained prominence during this period, representing the interests of the working class. In 1924, Ramsay MacDonald became the first Labour Prime Minister. Women's suffrage. The Representation of the People Act 1918 granted the vote to women over 30 who met certain property qualifications. The Representation of the People, Equal Franchise Act 1928 extended the franchise to all women over the age of 21, achieving equal voting rights with men. Rise of fascism. The interwar period also saw the rise of extremist political movements. Fascist organizations, inspired by Mussolini's Italy and later Hitler's Germany, gained some support in Britain but were largely marginalized by mainstream politics. World War II, 1939–1945. Outbreak of war. Germany's invasion of Poland. World War II began on September 1, 1939, with Germany's invasion of Poland. Britain and France declared war on Germany 2 days later. Phony war. The early months of the war were marked by a period of inactivity known as the Phony War. This ended in 1940 when Germany launched a series of rapid invasions across Europe, culminating in the fall of France. Major battles and campaigns. Battle of Britain, 1940. One of the most critical battles of the war was the Battle of Britain, fought in the skies over southern England. The Royal Air Force, RAF, successfully defended against the German Luftwaffe, preventing a planned invasion of Britain. Blitz and Home Front. German bombing raids, known as the Blitz, targeted British cities from 1940 to 1941. London, Coventry, and other major cities suffered extensive damage. The civilian population endured blackouts, rationing, and air raid precautions. D-Day and Liberation of Europe, 1944. The Allied invasion of Normandy on June 6, 1944, known as D-Day, marked the beginning of the liberation of Western Europe. British, American, and Canadian forces played key roles in the landings and subsequent campaigns. End of the war. Victory in Europe. The war in Europe ended with Germany's unconditional surrender on May 8, 1945, celebrated as Victory in Europe, VIII Day. Victory over Japan. The war in the Pacific continued until Japan's surrender on August 15, 1945, following the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Post-war reconstruction and decolonization. Rebuilding Britain. Labour government and welfare state. The Labour Party, led by Clement Attlee, won a landslide victory in the 1945 general election. Attlee's government implemented significant social reforms, including the establishment of the National Health Service, NHS, in 1948, nationalisation of key industries, and the expansion of social security. Economic recovery. Post-war Britain faced severe economic challenges, including debt, shortages, and the need to rebuild damaged infrastructure. The Marshall Plan, a U.S. aid program, provided crucial financial support for reconstruction. Decolonization. Independence movements. The post-war period saw a wave of decolonization as countries in Asia, Africa, and the Caribbean sought independence from British rule. India, Pakistan, and Burma, Myanmar, gained independence in 1947–1948, followed by many African nations in the 1950s and 1960s. Suez Crisis, 1956. The Suez Crisis marked a turning point in Britain's global influence. The attempt to regain control of the Suez Canal, following its nationalization by Egypt, ended in political and military failure, highlighting the decline of British imperial power. Late 20th century. Social and cultural changes. Swinging 60s. The 1960s were a period of significant social and cultural change. The era was marked by a liberalization of attitudes towards sex, race, and gender, and a flourishing of popular culture, including music, fashion, and art. Immigration and multiculturalism. Post-war Britain saw increased immigration from former colonies, leading to the development of a multicultural society. The arrival of the Windrush generation from the Caribbean in 1948 symbolized the beginning of this demographic shift. Women's liberation movement. The women's liberation movement gained momentum in the 1960s and 1970s, advocating for gender equality, reproductive rights, and changes in laws related to employment and family life. Political developments. Thatcher era, 1979–1990, Margaret Thatcher, leader of the Conservative Party, became the first female Prime Minister in 1979. Her policies, known as Thatcherism, emphasized free market economics, privatization of state-owned industries, and reducing the power of trade unions. Her tenure was marked by significant social and economic changes, as well as controversy over issues like the poll tax and the Falklands War. New Labour and Tony Blair, 1997–2007. The Labour Party, under Tony Blair, won a landslide victory in 1997. Blair's government, branded as New Labour, focused on modernising public services, introducing the minimum wage, and devolving power to Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. The period also saw Britain's involvement in the Iraq War, 2003, which proved highly contentious. Economic changes. 1980s economic reforms. Thatcher's government implemented sweeping economic reforms, including deregulation of the financial sector, privatization of state-owned enterprises, and curbing the power of trade unions. These changes led to economic growth but also increased inequality and social division. Dot-com boom and financial crisis. The late 1990s and early 2000s saw the rise of the dot-com boom, with rapid growth in the technology sector. However, the 2008 global financial crisis had a severe impact on the UK economy, leading to recession, austerity measures, and long-term economic challenges. Early 21st century. Technological and scientific advancements. Digital revolution. The early 21st century witnessed a digital revolution, with widespread adoption of the Internet, mobile technology, and social media. These changes transformed communication, commerce, and daily life. Scientific achievements. Notable scientific achievements included the completion of the Human Genome Project in 2003 and advancements in fields such as nanotechnology, renewable energy, and artificial intelligence. Social and cultural changes. Multicultural society. Britain continued to evolve as a multicultural society, with significant contributions from diverse communities. This period also saw debates over immigration, integration, and identity. Legal and social reforms. Major legal and social reforms included the legalization of same-sex marriage in 2013, advancements in gender equality, and ongoing efforts to address racial and social inequalities. Political developments. Coalition government, 2010–2015. The 2010 general election resulted in a hung parliament, leading to a coalition government between the Conservative Party, led by David Cameron, and the Liberal Democrats, led by Nick Clegg. The coalition implemented austerity measures to address the budget deficit and introduced significant changes to welfare and education policies. Brexit. One of the most significant political events of the 21st century was the Brexit referendum in 2016. A majority of voters chose to leave the European Union, leading to prolonged negotiations and political turmoil. The UK officially left the EU on January 31, 2020. COVID-19 pandemic. The COVID-19 pandemic, which began in late 2019, had a profound impact on the UK. The government implemented lockdowns, social distancing measures, and a mass vaccination campaign to combat the virus. The pandemic had significant economic, social, and health implications. Recent developments. 2020–2024. Economic challenges. The UK faced ongoing economic challenges, including the aftermath of Brexit, the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, and global economic uncertainties. The government introduced various measures to support businesses and individuals, including furlough schemes and financial aid. Political leadership. Boris Johnson served as Prime Minister from 2019, leading the country through Brexit and the initial stages of the COVID-19 pandemic. In 2022, Liz Truss briefly served as Prime Minister before Rishi Sunak took office in October 2022. Sunak's government focused on economic recovery, addressing social inequalities, and navigating the post-Brexit landscape. Social and environmental issues. Recent years saw increased awareness and activism around social and environmental issues. The Black Lives Matter movement, climate change protests, and discussions on gender equality and LGBTQ+ rights highlighted the importance of addressing systemic inequalities and environmental sustainability. Technological innovation. Advances in technology continued to shape society, with developments in artificial intelligence, renewable energy, and healthcare. The UK's commitment to innovation was evident in initiatives to promote green energy, digital infrastructure, and scientific research. Conclusion. Thank you for watching this comprehensive overview of UK history for the Life in the UK test. We hope this video has provided you with a thorough understanding of the key historical periods, events, and figures that have shaped the United Kingdom. Remember to review this material regularly and practice answering questions to prepare for your test. Good luck, and please subscribe to Which UK.